America built some of the most famous fighters of World War II, but not every design was a success. From disappointing failures to legendary champions, here are all 17 American fighters ranked from worst to best. At number 17 is the Brewster F2A Buffalo, widely regarded as the worst American fighter of World War II. Powered by a 1,200 horsepower Wright R1820 radial engine, it reached about 321 miles per hour, but added weight left the F2A-3 slow and difficult to maneuver. During the Battle of Midway, 13 of 20 Buffaloes were lost in a single engagement. Although Finland achieved remarkable success with the type, it proved a costly failure in American service. Coming in at number 16 is the North American P-64, one of the rarest American fighters of World War II. Originally built for Thailand, the aircraft was seized by the United States after export restrictions took effect. Based on the AT-6 Texan trainer, it could reach around 270 miles per hour, but lacked the performance and firepower of a true combat fighter. Its weapons were removed, and it spent the war serving only as an advanced trainer, never entering combat. At number 15 is the Seversky P-35, America's first all-metal monoplane fighter to enter service, but it was already obsolete when World War II reached the United States. Powered by a Pratt & Whitney R1830 radial engine, it reached about 290 miles per hour and carried only 2 machine guns. Lacking armor and self-sealing fuel tanks, it stood little chance against modern Japanese fighters. Most P-35s in the Philippines were destroyed during the opening weeks of the Pacific War. At number 14 is the Curtiss P-36 Hawk, a fighter that marked an important step in American aviation but quickly became outdated. Equipped with a 1,050 horsepower Pratt & Whitney R1830 radial engine, it reached speeds of around 313 miles per hour. By 1941, newer fighters had surpassed it in speed, protection, and firepower. Even so, a handful of P-36s scored some of America's first aerial victories during the attack on Pearl Harbor, before the aircraft was moved into training duties. Coming in at number 13 is the Vultee P-66 Vanguard, an export fighter that never lived up to expectations. Originally built for Sweden, it was later diverted to nationalist China after U.S. export restrictions. Powered by a 1,200 horsepower Pratt & Whitney R1830 radial engine, it could reach around 340 miles per hour. However, weak armor, unreliable performance, and fragile landing gear limited its effectiveness, making it an unsuccessful stopgap rather than a dependable frontline fighter. At number 12 is the Douglas P-70 Nighthawk, America's first dedicated night fighter, created by converting the A-20 Havoc bomber into a radar-equipped interceptor. Powered by 2 1,600 horsepower Wright R2600 radial engines, it reached about 329 miles per hour and carried 420 cannons. While it introduced airborne radar to U.S. night operations, its bomber origins limited speed and climb performance. The P-70 achieved only modest success before being replaced by the far more capable P-61 Black Widow. Coming in at number 11 is the Republic P-43 Lancer, a fighter that introduced technology later perfected in the famous P-47 Thunderbolt. Powered by a 1,200 horsepower Pratt & Whitney R1830 engine with a turbo supercharger, it reached speeds of about 356 miles per hour and performed well at high altitude. However, the lack of armor protection and self-sealing fuel tanks made it too vulnerable for frontline combat. Instead, it served mainly in reconnaissance missions and saw limited combat with Chinese forces. Breaking into the top 10 is the Bell P-39 Airacobra, one of the most unusual American fighters of World War II. Its Allison V-1710 engine was mounted behind the pilot, allowing a powerful 37 cannon to fire through the propeller hub. Although it reached nearly 385 miles per hour, the lack of a turbo supercharger limited its high-altitude performance. While American pilots found it less effective in Europe, Soviet forces used thousands of P-39s with great success in low-altitude combat on the Eastern Front. At number 9 is the Curtiss P-40 Warhawk, the fighter that carried American and Allied air forces through the war's difficult early years. Powered by an Allison V-1710 engine producing up to 1,360 horsepower, it reached speeds of around 360 miles per hour and carried 6.50 caliber machine guns. Although it could not match the climb or high-altitude performance of many Axis fighters, its rugged construction, reliability, and diving speed made it a dependable combat aircraft. The P-40 became famous with the Flying Tigers and served in nearly every major theater from 1941 to 1943. At number 8 is the Northrop P-61 Black Widow, the first American fighter designed specifically for night combat. Powered by two Pratt & Whitney R2800 double Wasp engines producing 2,000 horsepower each, it reached speeds of about 366 miles per hour while carrying airborne radar, 4 20 cannons, and 4.50 caliber machine guns. Its advanced radar allowed crews to locate enemy aircraft in complete darkness, making it highly effective in both Europe and the Pacific. The P-61 even recorded the final confirmed American aerial victory of World War II. Number 7 is the Grumman F4F Wildcat, the fighter that helped the U.S. Navy survive the toughest months of the Pacific War. Powered by a 1,200 horsepower Pratt & Whitney R1830 radial engine, it reached around 318 miles per hour and carried 6.50 caliber machine guns. Although slower and less agile than the Japanese Zero, its armor, self-sealing fuel tanks, and rugged construction gave pilots a major advantage in combat. Combined with the famous thatch weave tactic, the Wildcat played a decisive role at Coral Sea, Midway, and Guadalcanal. At number 6 is the Bell P-63 Kingcobra, an advanced evolution of the P-39 Airacobra that corrected many of its predecessors' weaknesses. Powered by a 1,325 horsepower Allison V1710 engine with improved supercharging, it reached speeds of about 410 miles per hour and retained its powerful 37 nose cannon. Although it saw almost no frontline combat with the U.S. Army Air Forces, more than 2,400 were supplied to the Soviet Union, where the Kingcobra proved highly effective in air-to-air combat, ground attack, and the final campaigns against Japan. Breaking into the top 5 is the Lockheed P-38 Lightning, one of the most recognizable American fighters of World War II. Its unique twin-boom design and two 1,425 horsepower Allison V1710 engines gave it a top speed of about 414 miles per hour, exceptional range, and heavy nose-mounted firepower. The P-38 excelled as a long-range escort, interceptor, and fighter bomber, especially across the vast Pacific. It also carried out the famous 1943 mission that intercepted and shot down Japanese Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, one of the war's most significant air operations. At number 4 is the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt, the heaviest single-engine American fighter of World War II and one of its toughest. Powered by the massive Pratt & Whitney R2800 double Wasp engine producing up to 2,600 horsepower, it reached speeds of about 433 miles per hour while carrying 8.50 caliber machine guns and a heavy bomb load. Its rugged airframe absorbed tremendous battle damage, making it a devastating fighter bomber that flew more than 546,000 combat sorties and became one of the Allies' most effective ground attack aircraft. Taking the number 3 spot is the Vought F4U Corsair, one of the fastest and most feared American fighters of World War II. Powered by a Pratt & Whitney R2800 double Wasp engine producing up to 2,250 horsepower, it exceeded 446 miles per hour and combined exceptional speed with heavy firepower. Early carrier landing difficulties initially limited its naval use, but once resolved, the Corsair became a dominant carrier and marine fighter. With an impressive 11-to-1 combat kill ratio against Japanese aircraft, it earned a lasting reputation as one of the Pacific War's finest fighters. At number 2 is the Grumman F6F Hellcat, the fighter that established American dominance over the Pacific. Powered by a Pratt & Whitney R2800 double Wasp engine producing up to 2,200 horsepower, it reached speeds of around 391 miles per hour while carrying 6.50 caliber machine guns and a heavy external weapons load. Designed with armor, self-sealing fuel tanks, and outstanding reliability, the Hellcat destroyed more than 5,000 enemy aircraft and achieved an extraordinary combat kill ratio of approximately 19-to-1, becoming the U.S. Navy's most successful fighter of World War II. Taking the top spot is the North American P-51 Mustang, widely regarded as the finest American fighter of World War II. Powered by the Packard-built Rolls-Royce Merlin V1650 engine, It reached speeds of up to 437 miles per hour while combining long-range, high-altitude performance, and 6.50 caliber machine guns. The Mustang gave Allied bombers reliable escort deep into Germany, helping secure air superiority over Europe. With nearly 5,000 enemy aircraft credited to its pilots, the P-51 became the defining American fighter of the war and one of history's greatest combat aircraft.